Most people don't actually want money. What they want is what they believe money will fix. They want relief from anxiety. They want freedom from pressure. They want proof that their life is moving forward. Money becomes the symbol of all of that. And when people feel stuck financially, they don't just feel poor, they feel behind. They feel embarrassed. They feel like everyone else understands something they don't. This emotional gap is where the idea of money manifesting enters the picture. At its core, manifesting money promises something very seductive. It says that wealth is not primarily about skill, timing, or systems. It says wealth is about belief. Think the right thoughts, feel the right emotions, align yourself with abundance, and money will come. For someone who feels powerless, this message feels like control. For someone who feels ashamed, it feels like forgiveness. For someone who feels exhausted, it feels like hope without effort. That is why this idea spreads so easily. But here is the first uncomfortable truth. Belief has never been the main driver of financial outcomes. Behavior has. Every financial result you see in the real world is the consequence of repeated decisions over time. Income is created by value. Savings are created by restraint. Wealth is created by systems. None of those respond to belief alone. To understand why manifesting money feels convincing, we need to understand how humans emotionally process uncertainty. Money is one of the most uncertain elements in modern life. Jobs are unstable. Costs are rising. The future feels unpredictable. When uncertainty increases, people don't look for truth. They look for certainty. Manifesting offers certainty without evidence. It says, if you do this correctly, the outcome is guaranteed. That promise is incredibly powerful to the human brain. Psychologists have long studied this phenomenon. When people feel a lack of control, they are more likely to adopt beliefs that restore a sense of agency, even if those beliefs are not grounded in reality. This is known as compensatory control. Manifesting money functions exactly this way. It restores the feeling of control without actually changing the underlying conditions. This leads to an important distinction. Feeling in control is not the same as being in control. Someone who visualizes wealth every day may feel proactive, disciplined, and aligned. But if their income doesn't increase, their expenses aren't tracked, and their decisions remain unchanged, nothing has actually improved. The feeling replaced the function. This is where manifesting quietly becomes dangerous. Not because it is malicious, but because it redirects effort away from leverage. Time is spent affirming instead of learning. Energy is spent visualizing instead of planning. Hope is spent instead of capital. Years can pass like this, and time, unlike money, does not compound. Let's look at how this belief subtly reframes responsibility. Manifesting culture often claims to empower people, but in practice, it externalizes outcomes. If money arrives, it was alignment. If money doesn't arrive, it was resistance. If progress is slow, the universe is testing patience. Notice what is missing. There is no feedback loop tied to action. Nothing measurable can be adjusted. Belief becomes both the input and the excuse. Contrast this with how real financial systems operate. If your expenses exceed your income, the system fails. If your investments are poorly diversified, risk increases. If your skills are outdated, income stagnates. These systems give immediate feedback. They don't care how motivated you feel. They don't respond to intention. They respond to structure. This difference matters because structure creates predictability. Predictability allows planning. Planning allows compounding. Compounding creates results. Manifesting skips directly to the result without building the structure that makes it inevitable. Another reason manifesting spreads so effectively is that it aligns perfectly with modern self-help culture. Self-help content prioritizes emotional resonance over accuracy. Messages that feel empowering travel faster than messages that are true. Believe and receive sounds better than track expenses for 5 years and invest consistently. One sells transformation, the other describes work. This is not accidental. There is an entire economy built on selling financial hope without financial mechanics. Courses, coaching programs, workshops, and retreats often focus on mindset as the primary lever. Mindset is important, but without systems, it is irrelevant. Yet systems are boring to sell. Hope is not. Now let's address a critical misconception. Many defenders of manifesting argue that belief influences behavior. And that is true. But influence is not substitution. Belief can support action. It cannot replace it. When belief becomes the action, progress stops. Consider how real professionals think about money. Entrepreneurs focus on margins, not manifestations. Investors focus on risk-adjusted returns, not vibrations. High earners focus on leverage, not affirmations. Their confidence comes from understanding systems, not from ignoring them. There is a reason wealthy individuals rarely talk about manifesting money, because once you understand how money actually works, it stops feeling mystical. It becomes mechanical. Predictable inputs lead to predictable outputs. Not guaranteed, but directional. And direction is enough. The most harmful outcome of manifesting culture is not financial failure. It is delayed learning. People postpone acquiring skills because they believe belief will compensate. They postpone budgeting because scarcity thinking feels negative. They postpone investing because alignment feels safer than risk. These delays compound negatively. Let's be clear. Optimism is not the enemy. Confidence is not the enemy. Visualization is not the enemy. Confusion is. Confusing emotional readiness with financial readiness leads people to wait instead of build. Money does not arrive when you feel ready. It arrives when you are useful. It flows towards solved problems, not positive thoughts. This is the principle that manifesting avoids because it demands effort without fantasy. If you remove all language about energy, alignment, and vibration, what remains is very simple. Money responds to three things: value creation, consistency, time. Everything else is decoration. In the next part, we are going to examine why the human brain is especially vulnerable to these beliefs, how cognitive biases reinforce them, and why intelligent people fall into this trap just as easily as anyone else. The reason money manifesting survives criticism is not because it works, but because it aligns perfectly with how the human brain is wired. To understand this, we need to step away from finance and look directly at psychology. Specifically, how people make decisions under uncertainty. Human beings are not rational creatures. We are emotional creatures that justify decisions afterward. When it comes to money, this effect is amplified. Money represents survival in modern society, and when survival feels threatened, logic becomes secondary to emotional relief. Manifesting provides that relief. One of the most powerful forces at work here is confirmation bias. People naturally seek information that confirms what they already believe and ignore information that challenges it. If someone believes money can be manifested, every small coincidence becomes proof. A check arrives unexpectedly. A new opportunity appears. A good month follows a bad one. All of it is attributed to belief. Failures, on the other hand, are explained away. The universe is testing patience. Alignment isn't complete yet. Resistance is still present. The belief never has to face falsification. Another powerful bias is survivorship bias. Manifesting content overwhelmingly highlights success stories. People who claim belief change their life. People who say affirmations brought abundance. People who describe sudden breakthroughs. What is never shown are the thousands who believe just as strongly and saw nothing change. Because failure is invisible, success becomes evidence. Silence becomes irrelevant. Then there is hindsight bias. When something good happens, people reconstruct the past to make the outcome feel inevitable. They remember believing. They forget the randomness. In reality, financial outcomes are influenced by many variables: timing, opportunity, connections, market conditions. Manifesting collapses all of that complexity into a single explanation: belief. This simplification is comforting. Complex systems are stressful. Simple stories are soothing. And money is one of the most complex systems people encounter. Another cognitive mechanism at play is called effort justification. When people invest time and emotion into a belief, they feel pressure to defend it. The more time spent visualizing, affirming, and aligning, the harder it becomes to admit it might not work. Abandoning the belief would mean admitting that time was wasted, so the belief is reinforced instead. This is where manifesting begins to resemble ideology, not because it is organized, but because it resists evidence. Any contradiction is reinterpreted as part of the process. Any failure becomes a lesson in patience. The belief becomes unfalsifiable. Now let's talk about control. Psychologists distinguish between internal and external locus of control. People with an internal locus of control believe outcomes are influenced by effort and strategy. People with an external locus of control believe outcomes are influenced by luck, fate, or forces beyond them. Manifesting claims to create internal control, but actually reinforces external control. It teaches people to appeal to the universe instead of adjusting behavior. Responsibility feels present, but agency is absent. This contradiction is subtle. People feel responsible for their thoughts, but not for their systems. They monitor emotions, not numbers. They track alignment, not cash flow. This creates the illusion of discipline without the substance. Another reason manifesting spreads is because it avoids shame. Traditional financial advice often implies fault. Spend less, save more, invest earlier. These messages can feel judgmental. Manifesting removes judgment entirely. If you are struggling, it's not because of decisions, it's because of energy. This feels compassionate, but it removes the path forward. There is also a strong social component. Manifesting thrives in online environments where performance matters more than outcomes. People post affirmations. They share vision boards. They talk about alignment. These signals create belonging. Challenging the belief risks exclusion, so doubts are suppressed. Now consider how this intersects with modern economic anxiety. Wages stagnate. Costs rise. Traditional paths feel unreliable. In this environment, people are desperate for certainty. Manifesting offers certainty without confronting structural limits. It does not solve the problem, but it soothes the fear. Let's be clear about something important. None of this requires people to be unintelligent. Highly educated individuals fall into these patterns constantly, because intelligence does not protect against bias. In some cases, it makes justification more sophisticated. Another psychological factor is narrative identity. People construct stories about who they are and how the world works. Manifesting offers a flattering narrative. I am aligned. I am attracting abundance. I am becoming my higher self. These stories feel empowering. Changing the narrative feels like losing identity. This is why direct confrontation rarely works. Telling someone manifesting doesn't work often strengthens their belief. Because the belief is not about money, it is about meaning. Now let's examine the financial consequences. When belief replaces structure, people make predictable mistakes. They underestimate risk. They overestimate future income. They delay saving. They believe money will arrive before they need to plan. This creates fragility. Financial systems reward preparation, not optimism. Emergencies don't care about alignment. Markets don't care about belief. Reality applies pressure without explanation. This is where the damage becomes visible. When money problems escalate, manifesting offers no tools, no models, no adjustments, no feedback loops, only encouragement to believe harder. At this point, many people experience quiet disillusionment. They don't publicly reject the belief. They simply stop talking about it. And then they start over, often years behind where they could have been. The tragedy is not belief itself. The tragedy is misdirected effort. Time spent reinforcing illusions could have been spent building leverage. Skills, networks, systems. These are slow to build, but impossible to replace. There is a reason financial education feels dry. It forces confrontation with reality. Numbers don't care about intention. Spreadsheets don't respond to confidence, but they offer something manifesting never does. Feedback. Feedback is uncomfortable, but it is the only thing that creates progress. Without feedback, belief floats freely. With feedback, belief is grounded. In the next part, we will move away from psychology and look directly at money itself, how wealth is actually created, why systems matter more than motivation, and why boring financial principles outperform belief every time. To understand why manifesting fails in practice, we need to remove all abstraction and look directly at how money is actually created. Money is not a reward for belief. It is a record of value exchange. Every dollar represents a solved problem, a delivered service, or transferred risk. This is true whether the transaction is small or massive. Belief does not enter the equation. Income is generated in three primary ways. You exchange time for money, you exchange skills for money, or you exchange capital for money. In every case, the determining factor is usefulness, not intention. No market pays for hope. When people talk about attracting money, they often misunderstand causality. Money does not move toward people. People move into positions where money flows. This requires alignment with reality, not with emotion. Let's talk about skills. Skills increase your ability to create value. The more rare, transferable, and scalable a skill is, the more income it can generate. This has nothing to do with mindset. It has everything to do with effort, learning, and time. Manifesting culture often dismisses skill building as grind mentality. But grind is not the problem. Directionless effort is. Focused effort compounds. Now consider income growth. Income does not grow linearly. It grows in steps. Each step is created by leverage, a new skill, a new responsibility, a new market. Manifesting offers no leverage. Systems do. This is where compounding becomes critical. Compounding applies not only to investments, but to skills, reputation, and networks. Small improvements repeated over time create exponential outcomes. Belief cannot compound, behavior can. Let's look at investing. Investing is the most misunderstood aspect of wealth. Many people treat it as speculation. Others treat it as manifestation. In reality, investing is risk management over time. It rewards patience, diversification, and discipline, not excitement. Markets are probabilistic. They do not respond to emotion. They respond to capital allocation, information, and incentives. Optimism can help you stay invested, but it cannot improve returns. One of the most damaging effects of manifesting culture is how it distorts risk perception. People are taught to trust the universe instead of assessing downside. They confuse confidence with safety. This leads to fragile decisions. Real wealth is anti-fragile. It survives volatility. It benefits from time. It does not rely on perfect outcomes. Manifesting creates fragility because it assumes outcomes will align. Now let's talk about budgeting. Budgeting is often framed as restriction, but in reality, it is the foundation of control. A budget is not about limitation. It is about awareness. Awareness enables choice. Manifesting avoids awareness. It encourages focus on future abundance instead of present reality. But ignoring reality does not change it. Financial systems are built on feedback loops. If spending increases, savings decrease. If risk increases, volatility increases. These relationships are mechanical. They do not negotiate. Now consider debt. Debt is the opposite of manifestation. It is the future pulling resources into the present. Debt magnifies mistakes. No amount of belief can change interest math. This is where systems thinking becomes essential. Systems create outcomes regardless of emotion. You don't need motivation if the system runs automatically. Automatic savings, automatic investing, rule-based decisions. These remove psychology from the equation. Manifesting relies entirely on psychology. That is why it collapses under pressure. When stress increases, belief becomes unstable. Systems remain. Consider two people again. One relies on motivation and belief. The other relies on systems. When life disrupts them, only one continues making progress. And it's not the one visualizing. Now let's address a subtle point. Some people claim manifesting works because belief increases confidence, which increases action. This is partially true, but it is inefficient. You don't need belief in abundance to learn a skill. You don't need affirmations to automate savings. Action does not require philosophy. In fact, philosophy often delays action. People wait until they feel aligned instead of starting. But alignment follows action, not the other way around. Now consider time. Time is the most important variable in finance. Every year delayed reduces compounding. Manifesting encourages waiting. Systems encourage starting. Wealth is built by people who start before they feel ready, who invest before they feel confident, who save before it feels comfortable. Manifesting reverses this logic. The truth is uncomfortable. There is no shortcut. No mindset bypasses effort. No belief overrides structure. Money is boring. It grows quietly. It punishes mistakes slowly. It rewards consistency eventually. Manifesting fails because it tries to make money exciting. In the next part, we will examine the social and cultural forces that keep manifesting alive, why it spreads, who benefits, and how it shapes modern financial behavior. To understand why manifesting money refuses to disappear, we have to look beyond individual belief and examine the system that profits from it. Manifesting is not just an idea. It is an industry that thrives on uncertainty, anxiety, and aspiration. Modern self-help culture did not emerge by accident. It grew alongside economic instability, declining trust in institutions, and the collapse of predictable life paths. When traditional guarantees disappeared, people searched for personal guarantees. Manifesting filled that gap. The promise was subtle but powerful. You don't need permission. You don't need credentials. You don't need capital. You only need belief. This message resonated deeply in a world where opportunity felt restricted. But industries do not grow on belief alone. They grow on incentives. The manifesting ecosystem is perfectly structured to monetize hope without accountability. Courses promise alignment, not outcomes. Coaching promises breakthroughs, not metrics. Content promises inspiration, not instruction. Failure is never proof of inefficacy. It is proof of insufficient belief. This structure makes the belief system immune to scrutiny. There are no benchmarks, no timelines, no standards of success. Everything is subjective, which is ideal for selling. Social media accelerates this dynamic. Platforms reward emotional engagement, not accuracy. Content that triggers desire, envy, or hope travels further than content that explains mechanics. Manifesting content is optimized for virality. It is short. It is emotionally charged. It is aspirational. Financial education is none of those things. This creates a selection effect. Creators who emphasize belief grow faster than creators who emphasize discipline. Not because belief works better, but because it feels better. Algorithms amplify comfort. Now consider influencer economics. Influencers sell identity before information. They present themselves as proof. I believed, and now I live like this. The lifestyle becomes the argument. The method is secondary. This reverses causality. Success appears to validate belief, even when belief played no role. Viewers don't see timing. They don't see privilege. They don't see external variables. They see results. And results are persuasive. This creates a feedback loop. People imitate belief instead of behavior. They focus on mindset instead of mechanics. They chase identity instead of outcomes. The industry grows. The audience stagnates. Another reason manifesting spreads is because it avoids uncomfortable truths. Real financial conversations require confronting inequality, structural barriers, and randomness. Manifesting simplifies all of that away. It individualizes outcomes. If you succeed, you aligned. If you fail, you resisted. This narrative protects the system. It also discourages collective solutions. If wealth is purely personal alignment, then policy, education, and reform are irrelevant. Responsibility is isolated, and isolation is profitable. There is also a moral dimension. Manifesting reframes wealth as virtue. Rich people are aligned. Poor people are blocked. This belief is rarely stated explicitly, but it is implied, and it creates quiet shame. Shame keeps people silent. Silent people don't challenge ideas. They internalize failure. This sustains the belief. Now let's talk about aesthetics. Manifesting culture is visually persuasive, luxury imagery, calm voices, spiritual language. These cues signal authority without substance. The presentation replaces proof. Contrast this with real financial professionals. They speak cautiously. They emphasize uncertainty. They discuss risk. These messages feel weak next to absolute confidence. Confidence sells better than honesty. This is not unique to manifesting. But manifesting is uniquely resistant to regulation because it doesn't make specific claims. It sells feeling, not facts. Now consider why people defend it so strongly. Admitting manifesting doesn't work creates cognitive and emotional loss. It means time wasted, money wasted, hope misplaced. Defending the belief protects identity. This is why debates rarely change minds. The belief is not analytical. It is existential. At this point, it becomes clear that manifesting persists not because it produces wealth, but because it produces meaning. Meaning in chaos, control in uncertainty, identity in instability. But meaning does not pay bills, and identity does not compound. Eventually, reality intervenes. When it does, people face a choice: double down on belief or confront structure. Some choose structure. They quietly learn. They build systems. They stop talking about alignment. Others stay. They continue searching for the right affirmation. The tragedy is not belief itself. The tragedy is misplaced trust. Trust placed in narratives instead of mechanisms. In the final part, we will bring everything together. We will replace belief with clarity, emotion with structure, and fantasy with a realistic framework for thinking about money. At this point, the pattern should be clear. Money does not respond to belief. It responds to structure. What determines outcomes is not what you feel, but what you repeatedly do. So let's replace fantasy with a usable framework. Not a philosophy, not a mindset, a system. The first principle is clarity. You cannot manage what you refuse to measure: income, expenses, assets, liabilities. These numbers are not judgments, they are coordinates. Without coordinates, movement is random. The second principle is leverage. Effort alone does not create wealth. Leverage does. Skills that scale, capital that compounds, systems that reduce friction. Every major increase in income comes from a change in leverage, not a change in belief. The third principle is time. Time is not neutral. It either works for you or against you. Delaying action is the most expensive decision most people never calculate. Starting small and early beats starting perfectly and late. The fourth principle is probability. Outcomes are not guarantees. They are distributions. You don't aim for certainty. You aim for favorable odds, diversification, margin of safety, asymmetric risk. This is how reality operates. The fifth principle is behavior. Behavior beats intelligence. Behavior beats motivation. Behavior beats optimism. What you do on bad days matters more than what you imagine on good ones. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. This framework is boring. There is no aesthetic, no spiritual language, no dramatic transformation moment. And that is precisely why it works. Wealth grows quietly. It looks unimpressive in the beginning. It feels slow. It offers no validation. Most people abandon it here. Not because it fails, but because it lacks excitement. Manifesting thrives in this gap. It offers emotion where patience is required. It offers certainty where probability rules. It offers identity where discipline is needed. But once you understand this, you gain something far more valuable than hope. You gain agency. Agency does not mean control over outcomes. It means control over inputs. You cannot command results. You can command behavior. This is enough. Let's bring this down to reality. If you want more money, identify a problem people will pay to solve. Learn the skill required to solve it. Enter the market where that problem exists. Improve through feedback. There is no shortcut. If you want financial security, Spend less than you earn. Automate savings. Invest consistently. Avoid catastrophic risk. No affirmation replaces this. If you want wealth, separate lifestyle from income growth. Reinvest surplus. Protect downside. Stay invested. This is not inspirational. It is effective. Now, a final point that matters. Rejecting manifesting does not mean rejecting optimism. Optimism is useful. It keeps you engaged. It helps you endure volatility. But optimism must be anchored to reality. Otherwise, it becomes denial. The goal is not to kill hope. The goal is to relocate it. From belief in outcomes to belief in process. People who build real wealth are not more aligned with the universe. They are more aligned with incentives. They understand how systems behave and position themselves accordingly. This is available to anyone. Not equally, not easily, but realistically. If there is one message to take from this entire video, it is this: stop asking money to come to you. Start moving toward where money already flows. Stop visualizing outcomes. Start designing systems. Stop searching for the right mindset. Start building the right structure. The universe does not reward belief. Markets reward value. Time rewards consistency. And reality always wins. If this video challenged you, that's intentional. Growth begins where comfort ends. And if you want more content like this, clear, unsentimental, and grounded in how money actually works, subscribe. Not for motivation, but for clarity. Because clarity compounds, and belief does not.